Good afternoon. Our honor is very great today. We have had, almost as a miracle, you might say, come across the path of freely speaking, Mr. Ahmad Deedat. Mr. Ahmad Deedat is very famous in his own world, and if you don't already know him, I hope he will soon be very famous in yours. He is a Muslim. His title of the lectures that he is going to do, and the, not really debates, but the discussions with people here in Geneva, are Christianity and Islam, Christ in Islam, and the Prophet of Islam and the Bible. Now, we are doing this interview. It is both filmed and it is on audio tape. We are doing this on the 16th of March, 1987, for any information or dating that you might want to know before it or after it. And the events that will bring Mr. Deedat closer to you than this interview are going to be on Tuesday, the 17th of March, 1987, at the University in Geneva, on Wednesday, the 18th of March, in Uni 1 at the Aula B106, and the Prophet of Islam and the Bible, Thursday, the 19th of March at 8 p.m., Uni 1, Hall B106. So that, having that out of the way, because I know the interest that you will show to this, let me then welcome, with a very warm spiritual greeting, our friend Ahmad Deedat.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Now, of course, when I tell the people where you're from,
yes, ma'am,
it's going to be a big shock, and they think we're going to talk politics.
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Deedat is from South Africa. Now, we are not going to dwell on that subject in politics really today, but I do think for our beginning we'd like to know what brought you to South Africa,
yes, ma'am,
and how was your religious background developed in that country?
Yes, ma'am. See, I was born in India, and in 1927, my father, who had proceeded to South Africa, he called me so that I can obtain better education and better means of livelihood. And since 1927 up to date, most of my life I spent in South Africa.
And your, how many Muslims are there in South Africa?
We are about 500,000 Muslims there. About half of these 500,000, they originate in the Far East, and the Far East meaning Indonesia and Malaysia, and the other half originate in the Indo-Pakistan subcontinent. This is about the 500,000 Muslims. It's 250,000 from the Far East and 250,000 from the, what you would say, India, Pakistan.
Now, Mr. Deedat, I understand that when you talk about people like Bishop Mokoena, who represents 4.5 million black Christians, you talk about Bishop Barnabas...
Tutu?
No, not Bishop Tutu. The bishop who has the 3 million people that comes at Easter, Barnabas, Zion Christian Church.
Yes.
And then you have all of the churches represented by the World Council of Churches.
Right.
Then you have the white Afrikaner churches,
Right.
those on the far right.
Yes.
Then you have Afrikaner churches to the center and to the left.
Yes.
You have every other kind of religion. I know some metaphysicists.
Yes, ma'am.
Where do your Muslims fit into all of that potpourri
Yes.
of religious feeling?
Yes. You see, now the Muslims, he stands out in this, that his religion makes him opposed to apartheid, where artificially you're creating standards, false standards of judging people. Because the only standard the Muslim believes that God accepts is your behavior. The Quran tells us, Ya ayyuhan nas, mean, O mankind, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa unsa. So most certainly, He has made you all of a single pair, a male and a female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا. And it is He who has made you into nations and tribes. Purpose behind it? It says لِتَعَارَفُوا, that ye may recognize one another. This Mr. John is a Frenchman. This Mr. John is a Swiss. This Mr. John is... for the purpose of recognition, these are convenient labels. And the only valid standard of judging one another is, the Quran says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. So most certainly, the noblest in the sight of God is he who is the best in conduct. Not black or white, not rich or poor, but the best in conduct. This is the standard. And the standards by which we are being judged in South Africa is totally opposed to our standards.
Now, last question on that subject. Is there any one of those religious groups anywhere on either side of any color line that has members of it that are all perfect, that are not showing any form of discrimination? Perfect is a silly word. That are not showing any form of discrimination or not being political in a bad way about their things? Has anyone found the real truth of the truth?
Well, I can't seem to see a single church or denomination that, practices altruistically, these true standards. They have what you would say, conveniently at times, they broadcast that this cathedral is now open to all races at all services. But for 300 years they didn't do that. It's out of certain, I feel, reasons best known to themselves, for political ends, that the black man is becoming conscious, becoming more and more aware about these discriminations by the churches themselves. The churches themselves, those who claim to be very broad-minded, they have been discriminating themselves. For example, for 300 years, we never had a black bishop in the country. Not Anglican, not Roman Catholic. But now, all of a sudden, you have Bishop Tutu, he's an Anglican bishop. We have a Bishop Zulu, he's a Zulu bishop. How did it come about? For 300 years, you couldn't produce one. So no, I think there are other reasons than altruistically religious standards by which they are working.
And anybody can go to a mosque on any...
Mosque, anybody, black, white, there is no discrimination whatsoever. Even today, with all the people talking about...
but you have to be Muslim.
Even non-Muslims.
You don't have to be Muslim.
The mosque that I'm one of the guides in the mosque in Durban, and we get about more than 12,000 tourists a month, of the Jews and the Christians, people coming from all over the world, they come along. And one of the most important places that people do visit in Durban is the mosque, the largest mosque south of the equator, happens to be in Durban. And these people come along and they're most welcome, whether they are Christians or they're Jews or the atheists or agnostics, everybody is welcome. And we welcome them and we explain to them what goes on, and we give them free literature on Islam, and they go away happy, happy, happy. It makes us happy to welcome everybody now.
Now, Mr. Ahmad Deedat, we have explored your background in South Africa, where you've come from, and we are now very interested in the fact that I have heard that you are one of the most, not advanced, deepest, best, what is the adjective, that you know as much about the Christian religion and Bible and as much about Judaism as you do about Islam, and that your message is not to be divisive,
yes,
but to point out what's good. Let me just ask you,
yes, ma'am.
Speak to us. Where do you find this healing force?
You see, our belief is that the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, in their origin, these three religions are Semitic religions, and they have a common background in Father Abraham. The Jew respects Father Abraham, the Christian respects him, and the Muslim respects him, and we all claim a common heritage coming from Father Abraham. And I believe that it is the same religion. You see, whether you call it Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, to me these are not three separate religions. It is the same religion on different levels. The titles were given by man with regard to the term Judaism, because I've been asking Jews, Jewish learned men, that this word Judaism, is it to be found in the Torah? They says no. Is it in your Talmud? He says no. Is it in your Mishnah? He says no. Then say, where did you get it? Most of them are puzzled. Where did the word Judaism originate? As is Christianity, is this in the Bible? Any Bible? Does it speak that the religion preached by Jesus Christ was Christianity? No. So where does this term come from? The very first time the word Christian was used, we read in the New Testament, was at Antioch, when the enemies of the followers of Jesus, disparagingly they pointed to them, saying that these are Christians, meaning the worshippers of Christ. But Christ never heard the word Christian, and Christ never heard the word Christianity. And I go beyond and I say, Christ never heard the word Christ in his lifetime.
But didn't he say, I and the Father are one,
yes.
and therefore doesn't that mean in Judaism, me talking about this, but doesn't that mean that if I and the Father are one, that that Spirit is immanent in me, and that therefore he would be the Christ? Or that he would acknowledge himself as being the Christ that was foreseen by the Jews? How am I doing, Mother?
Yeah. No, Christ, you see the term Christ, it comes from the word Messiah, the Hebrew word Messiah. The Hebrew word Messiah, Arabic Masih, is the same word, same root form, going back to the word Masaha in Hebrew and Arabic, which means one who is anointed, rubbed over, massaged. Priests and kings were anointed in consecration to their offices, like a coronation ceremony or like a gowning ceremony. So when a person was officially appointed to a certain status, he was the Messiah, the anointed one. Hebrew word Messiah. Translated into Greek, Christos, from which they lopped off the os and left you with Christ.
Then what is Christ in Islam?
Yes. In Islam, we accept that Jesus was the Christ, meaning he was the one that was promised by God Almighty to come to the Jews and reform the Jews. Now, when he came, he claimed that he was the Messiah, from which we get the word Christ, through the word Christos, and from which again we get the word Christianity. But the word Christ was never heard by Jesus in his lifetime, because this is a Greek word. He said, I am the Messiah. He didn't say, I am the Christ in Greek, because he's talking to the Jews, a Jewish prophet coming to Jews, speaking that Jewish language, Hebrew or Aramaic.
He did, Aramaic, I thought.
Aramaic, yes. So while he's speaking, he's saying in his own language is that I am the Messiah, the anointed one, the chosen one. But his people didn't recognize him. They insinuated that he was an impostor, and as such, they had him hanged on the cross. The Muslim attitude is that he was the true messenger of God, and he was the Messiah. And more than that he was born miraculously, without any male intervention, and that he gave life to the dead by God's permission, and he healed those born blind and the lepers by God's permission. So we are going further than the Jews in the acceptance of Jesus Christ.
Do you have any Jewish friends?
Yes, I do have, and I also reason with them.
Are you sure you have Jewish friends?
Yes, I do have, man. I worked for Jews for a number of years, and we had fantastic relationship, man. And I have addressed Jewish audiences, and they seem to respond beautifully, to my messages.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Christ in Islam, you recognize him. The Jews do not. They are still waiting that Messiah. And then where does your prophet, sir, the prophet of Islam and the Bible, come in?
Yes. You see, Muhammad came 600 years after Jesus. Jesus the Christ. 600 years after. God Almighty appointed him. And now there was a dispute going on in his own environment between the Jews and the Christians with regards to the personality of Jesus. What was his stand? What would be the stand of his followers? So he clarifies the position for us with regards to Jesus, that he was one of the mightiest messengers of God. He was the Messiah. He was born miraculously, but he was not God in human form. He's not God incarnate. And he's not the begotten Son of God.
How can you tell that from the Bible?
The Bible also tells us the very same thing. I mean, in my reading of the Christian Bible, nowhere does Jesus ever say at any time, I am God or worship me. Nowhere. There is not a single Bible among the many versions. There is not a single statement, unequivocal statement, anywhere in any Bible. But on the contrary, like you had mentioned a few minutes back, about I and my Father are one. Now people, when they read that, the Christian, now he is, I say, programmed. We are all programmed. There is no doubt about that. But we must be big enough to say, let's see if you can reprogram me. Now, the Christian has been programmed to think that when he said, I and my Father are one, which meant that he was claiming divinity, that he is God himself. We says, no, he didn't mean in that sense. Though the Jews, according to the Christian scriptures, they took exception to that statement of his. But he explains, he said, is it not written in your law, I said ye are gods, that people are even called gods in the scriptures. And you find no fault with that. Why are you taking exception to me when I say I am the Son of God? So in other words, now he was speaking in the sense that God Almighty and him, in purpose they are the same, not in omnipotence, in omniscience, or in any other or spiritual matters. He, as he said, my Father is greater than I. So my Father is greater than all. He said, I can of my own self do nothing. God can do everything. He knows everything. He says, of that day, in the last day, knoweth no man, no, not the angels, not the Son, but the Father in heaven. No way does he claim equality with God. He's always a subordinate position. But now people, these statements are taken to me out of context, and a religion has been made out of it.
What about Muhammad?
Muhammad is no more than a
Messiah?
messenger. No, he is the messenger of God.
He's a messenger.
Yes, Jesus was also a messenger, but he was somebody that the Jews were waiting for, to liberate them from the Roman bondage, to free them. He had come to do a spiritual job of work. As he told Pilate, Pontius Pilate, he says, my kingdom is not of this world. In other words, mine is a spiritual kingdom. I want to elevate these people spiritually. The people of the time, naturally being under bondage, under Roman rule, they wanted somebody, a physical liberator, making them masters of the world. So the man was not prepared to do that. So the Jews as a people, they had rejected him. But we feel that he was the Messiah that was promised to the Jews.
But if Muslims have Muhammad and the Christians have Jesus, and the Jews don't have anybody yet, is that right?
No, they have Moses and the prophets.
Well, but I mean, they don't have a latter day. Theirs go way, way back.
You see, because we feel that they missed the bus with regards to Jesus. But Jesus was the Messiah. But now the Jews have given up all hope of the Messiah. They don't talk about the Messiah anymore. See?
I bet they don't in their hearts. I bet they don't.
Yes, because they said, no, look, we now need, they will take matters into our own hands. They wanted the Messiah to come and do a job for them. And practical philosophy they applied. Theodor Hertz said, no, we will get what the Messiah is supposed to do. And they did it. 1948, they established the State of Israel. They took the hands out of the Messiah's hand and they established the State of Israel.
For the first and only time that I was in Israel, I was in a dining room by myself, and I didn't know anything about the holy days. I didn't know anything about the customs. And I was finishing my supper, and I heard kind of a singing. And when I looked over and I saw some men softly singing, I honestly thought they were drunk. And I was sort of embarrassed. And then as this sound went around the room, this beautiful, beautiful sound came in these deep voices. Then I realized that they all had little books and that they were singing and giving thanks at the end of a meal. And the tears came to my eyes. It was so beautiful. And I felt the Spirit so strongly. I can't describe to you how strongly I felt that. And I truly felt that I was linked. I didn't know what they were singing. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew that the presence of the Spirit was there. And that's what I call the Spirit that I felt when I first saw you. That same Spirit, because you have a radiant face, No, you do. And you don't have all those worry lines and those lines of anguish that people that don't know God.
Yes,
and so I feel that in you, I felt it in them, and I hope it is observed in a tiny bit in myself, and that's to me what's that unity. Is that the Christ? Is that Spirit? Is that, did Muhammad have a word for it? What is that?
I think it is to be in tune with God. See, if we are trying to fulfill the plan of God, His word, automatically I feel that this Spirit permeates in the person. Though you might carry what I would say wrong labels. We can have wrong labels put onto ourselves because we think maybe if I put this label is the right one or that one, but I think it's not the label. It is the Spirit, haqq, truth. The Quran says, Al-haqqu min rabbikum wa la takun min al-mumtareen. It says truth comes from God alone. So be not of those who doubt. There is only one truth, and that truth is from God. Whatever God says is truth. Once you are in tune with that, you vibrate on His wavelength. You don't become gods, but you are on His same vibration as His vibration.
Now, Mr. Deedat, how can you explain, sir, with your deep knowledge of of all of the religious literature, how can you explain that people from your religion, people from Christianity, people from Israel, people from every other religion, and especially those with no religion at all who deny God, that we're all out there cheerfully slaughtering each other every single day from morning until night, and sometimes they stay up all night to get the job done?
True, ma'am.
Where
You
is
see,
God and Mohammed and everybody
It is
else?
programming, ma'am. You see, we all can get programmed.